January 24th, 2026. A Friday evening, the Olympic Council of Asia releases a statement, 14 words that confirmed what skeptics had whispered for years. The 2029 Asian Winter Games will be postponed to a later date. No specific reason given. No new date announced. Just the quiet death of one of the most audacious promises in sports history. Winter Games in the Arabian desert. Trojena, the mountain resort being carved into Saudi Arabia's Sarawat mountains, was supposed to make history. The first Winter Games ever held in an Arabic-speaking country. The first major winter sports event in the Arabian Peninsula. A showcase for Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman's vision of transforming his desert kingdom into a global destination for everything, even snow. 3 years of construction, billions of dollars committed. Contracts signed with the world's most prestigious architecture firms. Zaha Hadid Architects. Luxury hotel brands fighting for positioning. A ski village designed to operate year-round in a region where summer temperatures exceed 40 degrees Celsius. All of it suspended indefinitely. The statement spoke of assured strategic commitment to the long-term and sustainable development of winter sports in Saudi Arabia. It promised standalone winter sports events in coming years. Instead, translation. The games aren't happening. The resort isn't ready. The money has run out. The dream is over, at least for now. But the real question isn't why the games were cancelled. Anyone following NEOM could have predicted this. The real question is far more troubling. What happens to everything already built? What happens to the billions already spent? What happens to the workers, the contracts, the promises? What happens to Trojena? To understand what Saudi Arabia just lost, you need to understand what Trojena was supposed to become. Trojena was not just a ski resort. It was a statement, a declaration that Saudi Arabia could defy geography itself. Nestled in the Sarawat mountains at elevations reaching 2,600 meters, Trojena was designed as a year-round mountain destination, unlike anything the world had seen. Not because of its skiing, which would rely heavily on artificial snow and synthetic slopes, but because of its sheer ambition. The plans included a ski village spanning multiple zones, featuring outdoor slopes, using manufactured snow during winter months, and synthetic surfaces during summer. Temperatures at this elevation can drop below freezing in winter, making limited natural skiing theoretically possible. The Volt, a folded vertical village designed to create a microclimate through its unique architecture. Luxury residences cascading down the mountainside, entertainment venues carved into rock faces, a man-made freshwater lake. The lake at the heart of the development. Surrounding it, wellness resorts, adventure sports facilities, and nature reserves. Zaha Hadid Architects was designing a signature tower. Adas was creating the ski village itself. The world's leading hospitality brands were competing for hotel contracts. The total investment was projected at tens of billions of dollars. The completion date, 2026, in time for the resort to be tested before the 2029 Asian Winter Games. The games themselves would feature at least 47 medal events across disciplines, including skiing, snowboarding, figure skating, ice hockey, and curling. Indoor iced venues would handle sports requiring consistent temperatures. Outdoor slopes would showcase Saudi Arabia's ability to create winter conditions in the desert. It would have been extraordinary. The key phrase would have been, the cancellation didn't come without warning. For those paying attention, the signs had been accumulating for months. Warning, sign 1. The construction pace. Trojena was supposed to be substantially complete by 2026. Satellite imagery and construction. Reports told a different story. By late 2025, the ski village remained largely in early stages of development. The signature architectural projects existed primarily in renderings. The infrastructure required to host an international sporting event, transportation networks, accommodation capacity, broadcast facilities, was nowhere near ready. Warning sign 2. The silence from NEOM. Major sporting events typically generate years of promotional activity. Press conferences, mascot reveals, ticket programs, volunteer recruitment, sponsor announcements. For the 2029 Asian Winter Games, there was almost nothing. NEOM's communications focused on other projects. The games themselves were mentioned rarely, briefly, without detail. Warning sign 3. The financial pressure. Throughout 2025, reports emerged of budget constraints across NEOM. The Public Investment Fund, which finances NEOM, wrote down $8 billion in August 2025. Oil prices hovered around $60 per barrel, far below the level needed to fund Saudi Arabia's ambitious project portfolio. Something had to give. Warning sign 4. The backup conversations. In late 2025, reports surfaced that the Olympic Council of Asia had quietly contacted South Korea about the possibility of hosting the 2029 Games if Trojena could own to deliver. Gangwon Province, which hosted the 1999 Asian Winter Games, the 2018 Winter Olympics, and the 2024 Winter Youth Olympics, was an obvious alternative. China also indicated willingness to step in. When organizing bodies start looking for backup hosts, the primary host is in serious trouble. Warning sign 5. The line. Trojena was never meant to stand alone. It was part of the NEOM ecosystem, drawing visitors who would also experience the line, the revolutionary linear city. But the line was collapsing. Construction suspended. Plans scaled back. Vision abandoned. If the line couldn't work, why would anyone believe Trojena could? The warnings were there. The industry saw them. The sports world saw them. The financial analysts saw them. The announcement on January 24th surprised no one who had been watching. It only surprised those who believed the promotional videos. Here's the question nobody in Saudi Arabia wants to answer. How much has already been spent on Trojena? Official figures are not available. NEOM operates with limited transparency, and individual project budgets are not publicly disclosed. But piecing together contract announcements, construction reports, and industry estimates, a picture emerges. Infrastructure development. Major earthworks have been completed. Roads have been cut into mountainsides. Foundations have been poured. Utilities have been installed. This work alone represents hundreds of millions of dollars. Architectural fees. Contracts with firms like Zaha Hadid Architects, ADAS, and others don't come cheap. Design development for a project of Trojena scale involves years of work by hundreds of professionals. Fees likely reach tens of millions of dollars per major firm. Construction contracts. Partial construction was underway on multiple facilities. The ski village, support infrastructure, worker, accommodations. Each contract represents committed capital, much of it already disbursed. Marketing and promotion. Trojena was heavily marketed internationally. Promotional films, advertising campaigns, sponsorship negotiations, hospitality industry roadshows. These efforts consumed significant resources. Asian Winter Games preparation. Hosting rights come with obligations. Organizational structures were established. Planning committees were formed. Venue designs were developed. Broadcasting frameworks were negotiated. Conservative estimates suggest at least $2 to $3 billion has been spent on Trojena specifically. Some industry analysts believe the figure could be significantly higher when including all associated infrastructure and NEOM allocation costs. Where does that money go when a project is postponed indefinitely? It doesn't come back. The roads carved into mountains remain roads. The foundations poured into ground remain foundations. The architectural designs completed remain designs. But without continuation, they represent sunk costs, money that cannot be recovered, assets that may never be utilized. This is the mathematics of abandoned megaprojects. The spending continues until it stops. What's built remains. What's spent is gone. Trojena represents billions of dollars of Saudi Arabia's sovereign wealth sitting in a mountain, waiting for a future that may never arrive. Let's decode the diplomatic language of the cancellation announcement. Postponed to a later date, to be announced in due course. In the world of major sporting events, this phrase has a specific meaning. It means, we don't know when, we don't know if, and we're hoping everyone will stop asking questions. Compare this to actual postponements. When the 2020 Tokyo Olympics were postponed due to COVID-19, a new date was announced within weeks. Summer 2021. The infrastructure was ready. The planning was complete. Only the timing needed adjustment. When the 2022 FIFA World Cup was moved from summer to winter in Qatar, the change was announced years in advance with specific dates. The event proceeded as rescheduled. These were postponements. They had new dates. They had clear paths forward. What Saudi Arabia announced for the 2029 Asian Winter Games is different. No new date. No timeline for announcing a new date. Just vague language about long-term and sustainable development of winter sports. In practical terms, postponed indefinitely means cancelled. The Olympic Council of Asia's statement referenced standalone winter sports events as an alternative. This suggests smaller, less complex events that don't require complete venue infrastructure. Perhaps international skiing competitions? Perhaps exhibition figure skating. Events that can use whatever facilities exist without requiring the full build-out that hosting the Asian Winter Games would demand. This is damage control. It's face-saving. It's the international sports community allowing Saudi Arabia to maintain dignity while quietly moving on. The 2029 Asian Winter Games will not happen at Trojena. Whether games ever happen at Trojena depends on factors that have nothing to do with sports and everything to do with money, politics, and the broader trajectory of NEOM. And that trajectory, as of early 2026, points downward. Within days of Saudi Arabia's announcement, alternative hosts began positioning themselves. South Korea emerged as the most obvious candidate. The country has deep winter sports infrastructure and recent hosting experience. Gangwon Province alone has hosted 3 major international winter events in the past 3 decades. The Korean Sport and Olympic Committee reportedly had preliminary conversations with the Olympic Council of Asia even before the official postponement announcement. They were ready. They had been watching Trojena's struggles and preparing contingency plans. China also signaled interest. The country hosted the 2022 Winter Olympics in Beijing and has invested heavily in winter sports infrastructure as part of its goal to have 300 million citizens participating in winter activities. Chinese facilities remain available and capable. For the Olympic Council of Asia, this creates a delicate diplomatic situation. On one hand, the Games need a host. The organization has commitments to athletes, sponsors, and member nations. An indefinite postponement damages credibility. On the other hand, Saudi Arabia is a wealthy and influential member of the Asian sporting community. The kingdom is hosting the 2034 FIFA World Cup and has invested heavily in regional sports development. Publicly abandoning Saudi Arabia for another host could damage important relationships. The likely outcome: quiet negotiations behind closed doors. If Trojena cannot demonstrate credible progress toward hosting capability within a defined timeframe, the Games will be officially moved. South Korea is the probable destination, given its proven capabilities and existing relationships. The timeline for this decision: probably 2026 or early 2027. International sporting events require years of preparation. If the 2029 Games are to happen anywhere, decisions must be made soon. For Saudi Arabia, losing the Games permanently would be a significant embarrassment. The kingdom bid aggressively for this event, positioning it as proof of Vision 2030's success. Failure to deliver would undermine credibility for future sporting bids. But at this point, embarrassment may be unavoidable. The question is only how it's managed. Among the many complications created by Trojena's troubles, one stands out. What happens to the world-class architectural projects already in development? Zaha Hadid Architects was designed in a signature tower for the firm, founded by the legendary architect who passed away in 2016, has continued her legacy with some of the world's most striking buildings. A Zaha Hadid Tower at Trojena would have been a landmark, an architectural destination that justified visits regardless of skiing conditions. ADAS, another internationally renowned firm, was designing the ski village itself. Their plans called for innovative structures that would create manage snow retention and provide year-round functionality. These are not small commissions. Major architectural projects involve years of work, hundreds of team members, and fees that can reach 8 or 9 figures for projects of this scale. What happens to these designs when a project is postponed indefinitely? Option 1. The designs remain property of the client Saudi Arabia, to be executed whenever construction resumes. The architectural firms have been paid for their work. The intellectual property transfers. If Trojena ever moves forward, The designs are ready. Option 2. The contracts include milestone payments tied to construction progress. With progress halted, remaining payments may be suspended or renegotiated. Architectural firms may need to write off expected revenue. Option 3. The firms quietly withdraw from the project, as several architecture practices have done with other NEOM components. Norman Foster withdrew from NEOM. Francine Haben distanced herself. The Trojena architects may follow. The Architects Journal reported that work on confidential projects in Saudi Arabia was expected to continue but remained subject to further client approval. This suggests uncertainty even within the firms about whether their Trojena work will ever be built. For the architectural profession, Trojena represents a painful lesson. The most ambitious projects often carry the greatest risk. The firms that win prestigious commissions in autocratic states with unlimited budgets may also be the firms left holding unbuildable designs when reality intervenes. The Zaha Hadid Trojena Tower exists in detailed renderings. Whether it will ever exist in steel and glass is a question no one can answer. In every megaproject failure, there are human costs that rarely make headlines. NEOM employs a construction workforce of over 140,000 people. Many of these workers were building Trojena. They came from South Asia, Southeast Asia, Africa, and other regions, drawn by wages that exceeded what they could earn at home. When a project is postponed indefinitely, these workers face immediate uncertainty. Some will be transferred to other NEOM projects still under construction. Oxygon, the floating industrial port, continues limited development. Sindala, the luxury island resort, needs workers. The reduced version of the line requires labor, but NEOM as a whole is contracting. Reports indicate the organization plans to cut its workforce to 1/3 of current levels. Over 1,000 employees are being relocated from NEOM sites to Riyadh. The construction army assembled to build the future is being disbanded. For workers, this means those with transferable skills and favorable contracts may find placement on other projects. They'll continue working, continue earning, continue sending remittances to families back home. Those without transfers face a different reality. Their contracts may be terminated with minimal notice. They may find themselves in Saudi Arabia without employment, dependent on companies and kafala sponsors to facilitate their exit. The kafala system, Saudi Arabia's sponsorship arrangement for foreign workers, ties employees to specific employers. Workers cannot easily change jobs or leave the country without sponsor approval. When projects collapse, workers can find themselves trapped, unablit, to work unable to leave, waiting for bureaucratic processes to grind forward. Human Rights Watch has documented repeated abuses of migrant workers on Saudi megaprojects. Phone confiscation, passport retention, wage theft, dangerous working conditions. These issues exist throughout NEOM, including Trojena. The cancellation of the Asian Winter Games won't appear on any human rights report. It's a sporting event, not a labor issue. But behind the sporting event are thousands of workers whose lives have been disrupted by decisions made in boardrooms. Dayel, never enter. They are the invisible cost of vision without execution. The 2029 Asian Winter Games at Trojena were never primarily about sports. Proof that Saudi Arabia could reinvent itself. Proof that Vision 2030 was working. Proof that a desert kingdom could host winter sports. That geography was merely a challenge to be overcome. That enough money and enough ambition could achieve anything. The games would have brought global media attention. Athletes from across Asia competing in events that Saudi Arabia, until recently, had never engaged with. Broadcasting rights worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Sponsorship deals linking international brands to Saudi Arabia's transformation. For 3 weeks, in 2029, the world would have watched Saudi Arabia project an image of a modern, innovative, welcoming nation. The coverage would have reached billions. The narrative would have been set. Saudi Arabia had arrived as a global destination. That was the plan. Instead, the world now watches Saudi Arabia cancel an event it promised to host. The narrative shifts. Saudi Arabia overcommitted. Saudi Arabia couldn't deliver. Saudi Arabia's ambitions exceeded its capabilities. This matters because Trojena wasn't alone. Saudi Arabia has committed to hosting the 2034 FIFA World Cup, the largest sporting event on Earth. 15 stadiums, multiple host cities. billions of visitors, infrastructure requirements that dwarf anything Trojena demanded. If Saudi Arabia can't complete a ski resort in time for the Asian Winter Games, can it complete World Cup infrastructure in time for 2034? The kingdom will insist yes. Officials will point to different timelines, different scales, different priorities. They'll note that FIFA has inspected facilities and expressed confidence. They'll argue that the World Cup has momentum that Trojena lacked. Maybe they're right. Maybe the World Cup will proceed flawlessly, but the cancellation of the Asian Winter Games creates doubt. It suggests that Saudi Arabia's mega-project ambitions may consistently exceed its execution capabilities. It provides evidence that the kingdom struggles to complete what it promises. For every future Saudi sporting bid, for every future NEOM announcement, for every future Vision 2030 milestone, the Trojena cancellation will be cited as precedent. You promised Winter Games. You cancelled Winter Games. Why should we believe you now? That question will follow Saudi Arabia for years to come. The mountains of Trojena will remain. The construction partially completed will remain. The roads carved into rock. The foundations poured into earth. The dreams rendered in architectural software will all remain. What won't remain is the illusion that ambition alone guarantees success. Saudi Arabia gambled that it could bring snow to the desert and the world would come to see. The world was ready to come. The snow never arrived. Now the mountains wait, partially developed, indefinitely postponed, monuments to a vision that melted before it ever solidified. The 2029 Asian Winter Games will happen somewhere. Who's not? Not. In the desert? Not in the kingdom that believed geography was merely a problem of insufficient spending. Some problems, it turns out, cannot be solved with money. Some dreams, it turns out, cannot survive contact with reality. And some mountains, it turns out, were never meant to host snow.